On opening day of this young 2023 season, I tuned into the Houston Astros game to, see if the defending World Series champs looked primed for a repeat. Definitely not to rewind the ceremonial first pitch 80 or so times, but if I had, every time I'd have said,
"Just a bit outside. He tried the corner and missed."
This was, of course, one of the most popular one-liners of Harry Doyle, the sarcastic broadcaster for the Cleveland Indians in the movie Major League, played by Bob Uecker, the real-life broadcaster of the Milwaukee Brewers. Many of Bob's lines in the film were ad-libs because the character he was playing was just a slightly more intoxicated version of himself. What a natural. Got distracted. Bob Uecker, aka Mr. Baseball, is a living legend who, needless to say, was just getting started when his playing career came to an end. You can catch him in his 52nd season over the airwaves for the Brewers games this season. This marks his 70th year in professional baseball. Though he was an instant hit on television with his charm and self-deprecating sense of humor, he took care to never stray too far from his first love, the great game of baseball. This is usually the part of the video where I tell the subject's origin story, but thankfully, Bob told it himself at his induction speech. Take it away, Bob.
I was born and raised in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Actually, I was born in Illinois. My mother and father were on an oleomargarine run to Chicago back in 1934 because we couldn't get colored margarine in Wisconsin. On the way home, my mother was with child, me, and the pain started, and my dad pulled off into an exit area, and that's where the event took place. I remember it was a nativity type setting. An exit light shining down. There were 3 truck drivers there. One guy was carrying butter. One guy had frankfurters, and the other guy was a retired baseball scout who told my folks that I probably had a chance to play somewhere down the line. I remember it being very cold. It was January. I didn't weigh very much. I think the birth certificate says something like 10 ounces. I was very small. And I remember the coldness on my back from the asphalt. And I was immediately wrapped in swaddling clothes and put in the back of a 37 Chevy without a heater. And that was the start of this Cinderella story that you're hearing today.
An avid fan of his hometown then minor league Milwaukee Brewers, Bob did not finish high school, but at the age of 20, he enlisted in the Army with the hopes of avoiding going overseas by playing military baseball with soldiers who had played in college or done some time in the minors. The funny thing is, Bob made his college career up. He claimed he had played at nearby Marquette, which did not have a baseball team, but the Army failed to check on that. He started his military baseball career at Fort Leonard Wood in Missouri and later at Fort Belvedere in Virginia. Upon completing his service, Bob Uecker signed with his hometown Milwaukee Braves as a catcher in 1956 and started his minor league career. In AAA in 1961, he batted .309 with 14 home runs. As you can see, there's no statistical indication of the mediocrity at the plate that would ensue at the next level, a trademark of Uecker's, an entire comic routine on how bad of a hitter he was. Bob's major league debut was on April 13, 1962. He appeared as a pinch hitter against Don Drysdale and grounded out. On a tough luck draw, his debut in Milwaukee was the 19th against Juan Marichal and the Giants. He went 0 for 3 with a walk. After spending the season backing up Joe Torre and Dale Crandall, he got a notable start to catch Warren Spahn's 327th win, which broke the record for the most wins by a left-handed pitcher. In 1963, Bob would only make it into 9 games before getting sent back to the minors for the rest of the season. Bob Uecker was traded to the Cardinals in April of 1964 for 2 minor leaguers. He backed up Tim McCarver, who would also become a successful broadcaster in his own right. McCarver maintains that despite Uecker's minimal contributions in games, his sense of humor from the bench kept the team loose, and it was critical to their success. The 1964 National League pennant race was a nail-biter. The Cardinals went 21-8 in September to sneak up on the Phillies, who had once led by a mile but lost 10 straight at the end of the season. Tim McCarver batted .478 in the World Series. Uecker recalled, "I sat my way through it, called it from the bullpen. Yankees fans threw trash at us and I threw it back. Bob still found a way into the spotlight, shagging fly balls with a tuba during the warm-up session before Game 1. He was fined $260 to account for repairs on the dented tuba." To start the 1965 season, he caught Bob Gibson at Wrigley Field on opening day in place of McCarver, who had broken his finger in an exhibition game. Gibson got off to an uncharacteristically bad start, going only 3 1/3 innings, giving up 5 runs on 6 hits. Ultimately, the game would become a 10-10 tie, which was called in the 11th inning because of darkness. Wrigley didn't have lights at the time. He batted .228 in 53 games that season before being traded to the Phillies, which he'd reference in his classic one-liner, "I'd be sitting on the bench and Gene Mauch would holler down, 'Grab a bat, Bob, and stop this rally.'" One of his proudest moments was leading the National League in passed balls despite only appearing in 59 games. But to be fair, Bob was becoming a bit of a specialist, catching the ever-unreliable knuckleballers. So it made sense for him to pack his bags once more for a mid-season trade to the Atlanta Braves to specifically catch for Phil Niekro. During spring training of 1968, Bob Uecker was involved in a nightclub fight where he had a beer bottle busted over his head, requiring 48 stitches. He re-aggravated the wound in a motorcycle accident. What a hell of a spring, Bob. He was released on April 2nd. Without a baseball job, Bob turned to comedy as a stand-up act, opening for Don Rickles in Atlanta, and he was noticed. In 1970, he'd do the first of nearly 100 appearances on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. Carson was the first to refer to Uecker as Mr. Baseball. Ironically, of course, as a common theme of their discussions on the show would be his mediocrity over the course of his career.
They see the monitor up there. Obviously, it's a locker room celebration.
No, this is actually a picture of me getting ready for a game.
When Bud Selig purchased the Seattle Pilots and moved them to Milwaukee, he signed Bob Uecker as a scout, affectionately known as the worst scout Selig ever hired. Bob said, "For every guy I wrote fringe major leaguer, so in case he made it, nobody could say, 'How'd you miss that guy?'" The team announced in September of 1971 that he'd continue in the booth as an announcer, where he's been ever since. He would also do play-by-play on Monday Night Baseball for ABC starting in 1976, where he had a great chemistry with Howard Cosell. This opened up the door for him to host several TV shows, The Superstars, Battle of the Network Stars, and Bob Uecker's Wacky World of Sports. He would also star in these legendary Miller Lite commercials.
You know, one of the best things about being an ex-big leaguer is getting freebies to the game. Call the front office, bingo. And once these fans recognize me, I probably won't even have to pay for my light beer from Miller. I love them. These fans know I drink light because it's less filling and it tastes great. Good seats, huh?
We're in the wrong seat, buddy. Come on.
Oh, I must be in the front row.
Come on.
Light beer from Miller. Everything you always wanted in a beer, and less.
Good seats, hey, buddy? He missed the tag! He missed the tag!
In 1984, he became a hilarious TV dad on Mr. Belvedere, with an all-time great episode being the matchup between the Little League team and a team of Hall of Famers. Johnny Bench ironically tosses Uecker the tools of ignorance. Sorry, this upload was done on your Aunt Linda's dial-up. In 1989, Major League was released. Most would agree it's top shelf as far as baseball movies are concerned. Harry Doyle was arguably the most memorable character, and boy, there were several in that movie. Bob also got involved as a personality in the World Wrestling Federation. He was a memorable part of both WrestleMania 3 and 4. He was voted into the celebrity wing of this sports Hall of Fame as well. It seemed like Bob Uecker was everywhere, but one constant was his voice calling all the biggest moments in Milwaukee Brewers history.
Here it is. Yelich sends one to right center and deep. Get up! Get up! Get out of here and gone! For Yelich!
Bob Uecker statue stands outside of Miller Park, but his other namesake is 106 obstructed view seats in the upper terrace level in honor of his front row Miller Lite commercial, affectionately known as the Uecker section. After all, without the cheap seats, what kind of baseball fan would any of us be? A legend beyond baseball, but first and foremost, he'll always be Mr. Baseball.